Okay, so this lecture is on the next topic we're going to cover, which is interrogation and interviews in forensic reporting. Sorry. This is called Chapter 2B, just because the book is blue, as you can see in the first slide here. Okay, the objective of this chapter. Don't forget that those slides are always available to you also on MyLS. Okay, so as you can see here, just if you take a look at the vocabulary, you can see here one of the main confusion in criminology is confusing interrogation with interview. As you can see, interrogation is when you question someone who's either a suspect or a witness, okay, by law enforcement. Interviews, it's only questions and answers, so it's only a session. It doesn't accuse. It's only the purpose of information gathering. Right. So when you interview someone, that person doesn't have to be a witness and doesn't have to be a suspect. Okay, but interrogation, yes. Okay, usually interrogation is, well, we'll talk about that a bit later. Okay, so an example of that, as you can see, October 24, 1994, some time ago. None of you were born. I was 16, 14, 16, or 16. Susan Smith claims she was carjacked with the children still inside the car because the testimony didn't make sense. The FBI worked with the local sheriff to develop a questioning strategies to get Smith to confess. And then Smith was confessed of 2 counts of murder and sentenced to in prison. So really in 1994, they developed like a strategy. Well, actually before that, but the FBI really came up with what we know as interrogation techniques. Okay, that's a short historical development of the creation of not only the police but also techniques of interrogation and interviews. Okay. By 1790, New York City has a fully operational daytime paid police force. Okay. In the South, police force mostly were just continuation of slave patrols. In the time in colonial times, times of slavery, created militia to catch runaway slaves, and a lot of the forces, sheriff and police forces, especially in the South, were just continuation of those. You can even look the fact that at the way you compare like the badges of the slave catcher and the badges of sheriffs and police force in the South, they're pretty similar. So historical fact here. But yeah, as you can see, it started quite quickly. 1790 here, pretty quick. So in 1908, the Department of Justice organized a group of 34 special agents and called it the Bureau of Investigation, which would be the FBI. Okay, all right, and that was under President Edgar J. Hoover. All right. Well, later, after 1908, Edgar J. Hoover, took the work of those 34 agents called the Bureau of Investigation, and first of all, established new professional standards for employment and promotion, right? And then created a central storage for fingerprints. So when we're going to talk about fingerprints started way before that. Okay, created a crime line and then changed the name in 1935 to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which we know now as the FBI. Same FBI who looked into Hillary's email, same FBI who just went and get some files at Mar-a-Lago, and they took my files. That is my bad imitation of the former president. I had to classify all of them already. They tried to give me the virus. All right, that's it. I'm not gonna do it again. Apologize for the mega offense. All right, so ethics is a set of guidelines, written and unwritten, that explain appropriate conducts for a particular situation or profession, especially important in law enforcement. Okay. Code of ethics, it's a process to make sure that those appropriate conducts are enforced by a member of a group of profession. Okay. And also, usually, of course, if you create a process to enforce that, then you have to create a system also to investigate when a member of that profession doesn't act ethically. Okay, so for example, for the police, they have a written code of ethics, and if they don't, and when they don't follow that, then you have different mechanism. One day I'll pronounce things correctly. Today's not the day. All right. And one of them is internal affairs for police force. Okay. All right. Those will investigate cops. A funny thing, I was discussing with Mr. Johnson, who used to work with us at Loyola. Cops hate internal affairs, which I think is a problem. I think we would have more confidence in our police force, and more confidence in the way that they're acting ethically. That's my personal opinion. If they were working with that system of investigation more, and understood that that's where there's reason. But usually they say cops hate internal affairs. They see them as almost the bad guys, right? So here you can take a look at that later on. The ethics rules, of course, members must act in the best interest of the profession. Okay, they cannot misrepresent their own training or experience, cannot misrepresent data. Okay, and if someone break those rules, well, investigation. Okay, and members may face censure, suspension, expulsion, and all of that. Okay. Bias. Criminal investigation must try to avoid bias. Okay, and bias, bias or preconceived sometimes. Sometimes bias, you act with bias without even realizing that you're acting with bias, right? And it's important to be, as devoid as bias as possible in law enforcement. Okay, so you have to minimize a preconceived notion about any aspect of the case, such as the victim, the suspect, right? And of course, bias can affect the evaluation. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to turn this into a social justice class, but if there's a big debate, and that debate has been existing now pretty much since the creation of this country, is that it seems like there's bias in, there's the question. I mean, there's a question of racial bias in law investigation here and in law enforcement. Okay. And that doesn't help when badges of police are derived from in the same badge of slave catchers, I was saying earlier. So, that doesn't help with people thinking, well, I guess, law enforcement doesn't always have people of color's best interest when we investigate. Okay. This is a famous Miranda warning. When you hear on TV, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you can say will be used against you in the court of law. This is all of it. Okay. Usually you always hear the first one. The third one is the right to talk to a lawyer. That if you cannot afford a lawyer, then the state will appoint you one. Okay. All right, so then you can decide any time to exercise these rights, and after that, they ask a question for the waiver. Okay. All right, but those are the ones. Okay. Let's take a look here at some interviewing techniques. All right. This is a cognitive approach. Okay, and what's the goal of that is to either retrieve memory of the surrounding or recall emotions around that surrounding, report events in small detail. Okay, so example of interview questions about recalling emotion. Describe the room in which yourself take place. Reporting event. Can you tell us what was on the wall? So those are the most interesting for me is the one when they ask you to close your eyes to alter the suspect or witness perspective. Okay. All right. Recalling the events in different order to see what type of answers. So as you can see, the questions here ask at the end, what were you doing before entering the room, right? And the first question is, what did you do when you entered the room? So just like techniques to see if they're gonna trip, okay, by answering. When you interview children, you have to make the child as safe as comfortable as possible. The techniques will vary if the nature of the crime and also how old that children is. The questions are usually prepared in advance, okay, and it's videotape also when it's with children. Okay. When you bring a children to the courtroom, that can be a bit tricky. You must consider what emotional impact it will have on the child. The children will be very truthful, naturally. It's very rare that children will lie. It happens, and also should the child face the alleged perpetrator, because of course we want to consider the emotional impact on the child. Okay. Before you go into interrogation requires a lot of preparation. Okay, so you have to look at all the statements from the witness or the report. You look at the physical evidence collected, all the reports. So you must look at a lot of data before you go into it. Okay, you just don't go and start asking questions. You must you must make sure you have a lot of data in case that to want to see if to look at how the interrogation will go based on the veracity of what the witness or suspect is saying. The physical setting of interrogation, I mean, you've seen many of them on TV, but of course, it's removed, from the rest of this the police station. If it's in a police station, the room is soundproof. No furniture. Of course, the speaker system for people outside to hear, and the mirror glass also for observation. Okay. Unless you're Superman and you can look through the glass. Yeah, I said that. Okay. The interviewer has to establish control. Has to let the interviewer know who's in charge. Okay, explain the suspect Fifth and Sixth Amendment right. Show evidence to support the case, and the body language has to be very deliberate. and to show that you're in charge, and know that it's, this is pretty serious. I'm not sure if they have good cop, bad cop. I think this is most time I've heard, as Mr. Johnson said, there's no such things, and I said, well, that means it's just bad cop and bad cop, right? All right, but he didn't find it very funny. Mr. Johnson can get very sensitive when you make fun of the cops. All right. All right, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but those, there's very different interrogation models. You have the suspect decision-making model. When the interrogator offers options available and the consequence for each. A cognitive behavioral model. When you question until the suspect is as result, so you try to break the suspect. A psychoanalytical model. It's like, look, if you tell us, things will be better for you. You will live the burden of guilt, and then I'm sure you're going to feel better. So that's the psychoanalytical. Emotional model. The interrogator that kind of make the suspect shift the blame without escaping a legal responsibility. Like, maybe it wasn't your fault. It's fault. It's the system got you to do that and things like that. So that's emotional model. An interaction process model is, the investigator tries to look at the best method to approach the interrogation based on the background and history, in fact, of the case. All right. So those are different models of interrogation. There's more detail in the actual chapter, and then also on this slide. But those are the different type of interrogation model, and that's why data is important before you start an interrogation, so that based on the data, like, maybe I should take that approach. All right. Look for sign of deception. Looking at the eye movement, if that person tries to look away every time, a mouth movement, if who's getting interrogated doesn't look directly into the eyes of the interviewer, shifting personality. So those are all signs of deception, okay, in interview or interrogation. All right. And when you report information, you have to be accurate, truthful, objective, comprehensive, of course. Okay. So, here's a little summary of this. As cities grew, the focus on policing shifted from peacekeeping to crime prevention. I would argue with that, but I'm not going to make it that class. Okay. But, so at first, the U.S. Department of Justice relied on outside investigation to perform investigation until the creation of the FBI. We had the director of the FBI actually coming to Loyola, James Comey. James Comey, who people blamed for Hillary for losing. I mean, trust me, it wasn't the reason, but the fact that he started an investigation on Hillary right before the election in 2016, people are saying, well, that's why Hillary lost. And then people say, look her up, you should be in jail, Hillary should be in jail, she's a crook. I'm sorry. He was at school. Actually, he was at Loyola. He visited Loyola because he's the uncle of a graduate, Jake Preston, class of 2015, 16. No, probably it's 2006. No, the election was 6. I don't remember. Yeah, graduated in 2016 because he was a senior, and then in the spring, he came and visit, talk about his experience, and we made sure to, as a student, to ask questions, but not ask about if he was investigating Hillary. And of course, as an idiot, are you gonna investigate Hillary? I wanted to beat up that child. All right. But yeah, he visited. He had secret agents with him all over the school in the gym while he was talking. We had it was pretty cool. And then a few weeks later, bam, investigated. I mean, a few months later, bam, investigated Hillary Clinton. So yeah, so we had James Comey, a director of the FBI, there. The same James Comey who would say in his book that when he met with Trump and actually Trump kind of fired him or he resigned before, but yeah, are you gonna be loyal to me, James Comey? Are you gonna be loyal to me? Just can't help it. I apologize. It's a bad mistake. Look for Jamie Foxx imitation of Donald Trump, of President Trump. Close your eyes and you won't see a difference. Jimmy Foxx is talented in everything, but his imitation of the president is. They tried to give me the virus. I mean, it's just awesome. All right, so I beat the virus. All right, so he's excellent. So yeah, we had the director of FBI. It was very, very, very cool. In class, you can ask me a bit more about that. But yeah, Jake Preston, one of the one good basketball player, was pretty good. And he played college also. Yeah, talk to Coach here about Jake Preston. Yeah, pretty good player. But yeah, Director of the FBI James Comey visited Louisville School in 2016, right before investigating Hillary Clinton. Okay, so we talked about this. Okay, and the last one, most important, objectivity is a focus on facts without influence from opinion and bias. Extremely important for law enforcement. Doesn't always happen, which is the big debate now in the role of law enforcement in our society. Okay, all right, and that's it. If you have any question, email me. So there you go. How do I stop this? Okay, here. They tried to give me that. Okay.